Hello and welcome to this final exploring session, first look exploring session, looking at the Devil's Charter, a tragedy containing the life and, spoilers, death of Pope Alexander VI. I said it on the first session, if you're surprised now, considering the body count of this play. Quite a lot of people have died, some of them by natural causes, in between acts. Not on stage. Nobody dies. Everyone just gets brutally murdered in really horrible ways. Therefore, we're really enjoying this play. We were a little lukewarm in the first session, but the second session really heated up the body count, and therefore we all leapt for joy. So to find out whether we're going to hit the curse of the final session or whether we've got a really good grip on this particular charter, we have reading Barbarossa, Bottleman, Modina, Belchar, and Caraffa is
Sarah Blake, actor, writer, and director, based in Germany.
Reading Second Boy, Astor, Soldiers, Cornetto, and Epilogue is Stephen, who appears to have frozen. So that's... Is either that or he's doing a very good impression of being still. Stephen, are you with us?
Come back, yes.
Excellent. So, reading Second Boy, Astor, Soldiers, Cornetto, and Epilogue is...
Stephen, who's just come back. I don't want to push my luck.
Reading Pope Alexander and Baglioni is...
Lalitte, I'm a teacher in Paris.
Reading Caesar, Philippo, Varca, and Cardinals is...
Alan, already confused in Suffolk.
Reading First Boy, Bernardo, Bentivoli, Astaroth, and a Devil is muted at this precise second in time, but is in fact going to be one of those days.
Anyway, Lois in London usually speaks.
And reading Katherine, Barber, Francis, and Rotsie is...
Aliki, Chapple, actor and translator, currently in Lancashire.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions and occasionally tinkithing a bell. We shall see whether we have any more tinkithing to do today. You don't want to hear the tinkithing of a bell, because it usually means the Pope's asking for something unsavoury. So, Act 4, Scene 4. Enter Caesar and Barbarossa. Soldiers! Oh, drums! Trumpets! I can't find my trumpets. There you go.
Fellows in arms, after our victories had in first front of our happy war, with men of hardy resolution, must we bend our forces against Furley, and where that proud Amazonian Katherine dareth defiance in the face of war, and yet our hopes are sure, all passage clear, and she, before I lodge this restless head, shall bear the bondage of this victory.
These proud presuming... Yes, I am unmuted, sorry. These proud presuming spirits of vain women, whose bloodless wounds are only bloody words, talk without reason, fight without resistance, but on the face of grim devouring war, with frowning forehead menacing his force, they fall down on their backs, as Venus did, when Mars beheld her with a soldier's face.
Nay, we must fight. I know the puissant spirit of warlike Kate, the pride of Italy, Sforza's brave sister and old Riaro's widow. Excellent valour and deep policy must win it, if we purchase at her hands.
And yet we be beforehand with the lady, having surprised her treasure and her sons as they were making their escape for Florence. What, shall we try, renowned general, and search her resolution?
Shall we? Doubt you not. Nay, though the walls of Furley were of steel, these pledges should make passage for our powers. And what? Shall we stoop for these 20 ensigns, which this last night have entered their ports? Nay, were they 10 to 1 within those walls, Caesar, that carried fortune in his standard, will make them give ground and subject themselves.
Speak then at once, renowned general. Shall we go, soldier light, to work at first? Shall we salute her with our cannon?
What? No, Barbarossa, not without a parley. Oh, God, I love her and admire her valour. Till we find her words prove empty squibs, we give her all the noble rights of war. Summon a parley.
They sound a drum, and there's the answer of a trumpet. Enter upon the walls, Countess Katherine, Julio Sforza, ensigns, soldiers, drums, and trumpets.
What, have we Pallas come upon these walls to bring confusion of our companies? Do proud Penthesilea live again? It's some time raging in the fields of blood, made passage with her angry sword through millions?
I tell thee, Caesar, son of Alexander, a book befits thee better than a blade. Per case, in scorn, thou wilt reply the like, a distaff fits me better than a pike. No, Caesar, had I now so many lives as there are stones or hairs upon your beards, I would forego them all before this honour which my dear Lord Riario did leave me, this pledge of my dear love, his children's patrimony.
Speaking mild a key, renowned Kate, I love you well and all brave Sforza's race. Yet you must yield, there is no remedy. It is the church's right, and I must have it.
Methinks a pulpit were more fit for thee. But didst thou ever read Saint Gregory, that he which hunteth for authority himself should govern direct? And know well, he did a deed of danger that advanced thee, for proud ambition violates all right.
Be not so bitter, Kate. A friend entreats you. But entreaties will not. Look upon me. Here standeth Caesar, the sharp scourge of Furley. And were your fort fenced with as many men as it is girt with stones, Caesar would have it. Subdue them and make pillage of their goods, and in resistance seal it with their bloods.
What, are your weapons sheathed in your throats? Is every word a sword? Come, shake hands, Caesar. Venture no further, and we will be friends. But if your words have accents in keen swords and end in blood, then, Caesar, look on me. I with defiance turn swords in your throats. You shall not thrust that imputation upon our sex, for I will fight it out so long as I can stand upon these walls.
You would repent it if you knew the worst. Consider, Kate. Be well advised first.
Caesar, at one word, to discharge my conscience, were there a cannon there to be discharged upon this fruitful womb, the nurse of children, and I, sure piecemeal, to be torn withal, if I would not surrender up this fort? Your cannon shot should plough these bowels up. That vow to God and my dear husband made, I never will infringe with perfidy. I know thee, bloody Caesar. The dishonour in yielding up thy reverend purple robes, which should protect widows' and orphans' rights, appeareth well in taking unjust arms to wrong the widows and the fatherless. Either fight, Caesar, or forsake the field. Persuade thyself. Alive I will not yield.
And I will show you what war's destiny prognosticates. Bring forth her ransom hither.
Barbarossa bringeth from Caesar's tent her 2 boys.
Nature be not quite extinguished. These pledges shall enfranchise you from war. I brought them to this purpose, that in them you with your friends might live in liberty.
Never but with advantages. Dear Lord. Monster of misery, what thinkst thou, Caesar, that I will yield mine honour for their safety? Be not deceived. Thou hast surprised my children, Riario's riches left in my tuition, and born out of these bowels. Dear boys, courage. Yourselves, I will defend your honours. I tell thee, Caesar, these my boys are taught to bear with patience fates inevitable. These carry Forza's spirit, and their fathers, I dare gauge life, and ask them, they will choose to lack their lives before they lose their honors.
Caesar in this has offered, like himself, he proffers to preserve your town untouched, your goods, your wives, your lives, your liberties. Mark what fruits thy bitterness brings forth to make thine hard heart infamous forever. Before thy face these boys shall lose their lives, if thou surrenderest not without more parley.
Bloody Bucyrus, I defy thy malice. I spit defiance in thy coward's face. Traitor to God and man, hast thou been, Caesar, insisting on high terms of worth and honor? Thou wouldst consider that their blood is noble. Thou wouldst consider that they be but children. Thou wouldst consider that thou art a warrior, and that such noble blood, spilt with dishonor, and trammed in with insidious treachery by God, nor man in heaven, nor earth below, can be forgotten or abolished.
Brave general, you parley with a woman whose heart is obstinate, whose hands are feeble, seemeth in vain and over tedious.
Speaking a word, cannon is my next parley. You will not yield your state to save their lives?
I will not, Caesar.
Cut off both their heads.
Let us entreat our mother, noble general, first to deliver up the state of Furley. And will you save our lives then?
Captain, do not kill us.
If she will yield the state, your lives are safe.
Good mother, for my father's sake that's dead, and for my uncle's sake, part of your bowels, and for her own sakes, yield yourselves and save us.
Good sweet mother, save us.
In heart unlike Riario's race, or Sforza's warlike lineage, by the mother, know what it is to die with liberty, and live with ignominious servitude. If you your lives buy with the loss of states, it were of all extremities the vilest. But in extremity, to die resolved, preserving state and reputation, is said to die within the bed of honor. This is an honor for Riario's children, and for my part, it never shall be said that Katherine, being strong upon her guard, having good forces, able to defend, in brutish fear should give away your states. I rather will obtrude myself, unarmed, and meet the thickest ranks that enter breach to be tossed up upon their soldiers' pikes. Sooner I will set all the town on fire, and with my soldiers sacrifice myself, rather than render up your heritage.
Oh, bravely spoken, warlike Amazon.
Mother, we scorn death in respect of honor. Let him perform his worst, we fear him not. Courage, sweet brother, think upon my father. I will die first, be not afraid of death.
Why, then you are resolved to die?
Aye, to die, Caesar.
Bring hither both their heads.
God's blessing rest with you, my dearest sons. And if I lose your states, my life shall follow. Nothing but violence shall force it from us. Ere long this quarrel twixt us will stand even. Farewell, dear boys, till we three meet in heaven.
Dear mother, sweet mother, good Uncle Julio, save our lives.
Away with him!
Let me, before I die, but kiss my mother.
What wouldst thou run again into my womb? If thou wert here, thou shouldst be posthumous and ripped out of my sides with soldiers' swords, before I would yield up thine heritage.
Come, brother, let us bravely die together.
Tell thee when that these have lost their heads, I will make sack and pillage of your state. Man, woman, orphans, all put to the sword. This hath your obstinacy wrought in us. Carry them hence, bring hither both their heads.
Exeunt soldiers with the boys.
Then a charge upon this valiant lady, this Themaris, this proud Semiramis, whose valour Barbarossa by these heavens is very wonderful and Glorious.
Had he more force, what would this tyrant do?
A charge! A charge!
For God's sake, charge! A charge! Let us to fight!
A spirit full of vengeance, wrath, and spite. Assault! Assault! Charge, noble hearts, a charge!
A charge with a peal of ordnance. Caesar, after 2 retreats, entereth by Scalado. Her ensign bearer slain, Katherine recovereth the ensign, and fighteth with it in her hand. Here she showeth excellent magnanimity. Caesar, the 3rd time repulsed, at length entereth by Scalado, surpriseth her, bringeth her down with some prisoners, sounds drums and trumpets.
Aegis Kate, you that would throw defiance into the face and throat of fate and Caesar, such are the fruits of pride and wilfulness. Have I performed my word? Are you surprised? It's not your life and living in my power.
Now that my sons, first by insidious means bereaved of their lives, and their states lost, the date of my calamities is out. Go forward with thy tyranny, strike, Caesar, and take away the mother with her sons. This done, recount what is thy victory, a woman with 2 children vanquished, a prize befitting the renown of Caesar.
Come hither, Katherine, wonder of thy sex, the grace of all Italian womanhood. Caesar shall never prove dishonourable. Behold thy children, living in my tent.
He discovereth his tent where her 2 sons were at cards.
Oh, mother, are you come? We be not dead.
Good mother, thank the captain, we live yet. They gave us spices, wines, and bade us welcome. I pray you thank them.
Oh, but your lands and honours are both lost. Had not an honourable death been better than thus to lose your states and livelihoods? Heroic soldier whose deceit is honour, thou that hast unexpected saved the lives of my 2 children, I submit them here, thy captives, for their ransom what is fit.
I freely pardon these 2 boys their ransom. Lady, behold thy treasure in my tent. Had I not won this town, this hadst thou lost. See, soldiers, that her jewels be reserved for own service. Now the quarrel ends.
But noble Caesar, well entreat our people. They be men valiant, civil, obedient, if you their magistrates entreat them well.
Take ye the charge of Furley, Barbarossa, and treat the people well. Do not restrain them. We freely pardon all of them their ransoms. So much as it is in us, we pardon all. Use them as citizens of Rome in favour. Other instructions you shall have hereafter. Till then, regard your charge, and so, farewell.
And it says enter with a drum, but I think exit with a drum. Anyway, something's happening with a drum with Barbarossa and soldiers.
Lady, yourself with your 2 little babes, I will take order shall be sent to Rome. Be not dismayed. You shall be well entreated. You shall want nothing fitting your estates. March with us on our way for Capua.
And march, Caesar, Katherine, her 2 boys, ensigns, drums, soldiers, trumpets, and they all go. And now we've done that scene, let's get back on with reading the play. I mean, it's like Act 2 has not been forgotten. We have this random war scene. Did I miss the memo about this war? What was it mentioned in passing last session? I just forgot and just missed. It was was it part of that sort of dialogue between the 2, Caesar and Alexander? It was mentioned in passing, wasn't it? And I just zoned out because I didn't care.
Somebody mentioned Katherine before. I don't remember reading about her.
No, we've not met her, and we won't ever meet her again. Sarah.
Yeah, because I was playing Alexander yesterday, I remember there was a scene after all the devilish invocation where, it was after Cesare Caesar had admitted that he'd murdered Candy, and Alexander had gone, oh, fair enough, fair enough then. We're kind of on the same wavelength with the whole murderiness thing, so let's just forgive and forget. Caesar then asked if he could take charge of Alexander's armies because he wanted to go and fight a campaign. Because Candy had been the head of the army, and then so Alexander made him head of the army, I think, so he could go off and do this. But it's a bit tenuous.
Yeah, and because it's an interesting set piece scene, isn't it? And it would make sense if it was in Tamburlaine the Great, where it's like, we are going to have some terrible atrocity, but no, actually, there are two boys, they're fine, they're just playing cards. He's introduced them to gambling, their souls are doomed. But within this narrative, it just sort of why? Lois?
Yeah, and I mean, my attempt to create a Stanislavskian portrayal of this boy sort of foundered in the fact that he starts out screaming, "Please don't kill me." Then he suddenly goes all noble. Maybe he's finally listened to his mother or something and discovered there's a better role to play. And then he's in the tent boozing it up and playing cards. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this was the author's idea about children, that they never stick to one thing for long.
Well, I don't know whether it might all work if you are a child and it's all very affecting, but it is very difficult to take it seriously. Oh, mother, are you come? We be not dead. It's not a great line. I'm sorry. Within the, someone's going to defend it now, aren't they?
I am. I absolutely
okay, Aliki, defend the line.
I think if he's a very little child, it works.
Mm.
Oh, Mom, are you here? Hey, it didn't happen after all.
One feels older than two, definitely.
Alan.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't only the children who did sort of screeching U-turns, but I felt that Caesar was all over the place in terms of how he was reacting at various points in that. Very difficult to find a through line on it.
Well, it's not only that, it's between scenes as well. I mean, Barbarossa suddenly turns into this total arsehole. Whereas before we started recording, we're going, we're asking, are there any nice people? And people were saying, oh, Barbarossa, he's all right. And so he's just a total dick. It's just... And it does feel like this scene wasn't written at the same time as the rest of the play. I'm just putting out that we were having this discussion about whether things were added at a later point and what sort of material might be. Is it all of this war stuff has just been crowbarred in to create some spectacle? Because, we've got a lengthy, it's effectively 3 scenes we've done here. The opening before the skirmish itself, which is very lengthy. There's a lot of action, people climbing, scaling ladders, fighting, Katherine showing excellent magnanimity.
Yes. Wonder how you do that.
I don't know how you do that. Anyone know how you show excellent magnanimity? And then with final sort of little scene to close it. So, yeah, it doesn't fit. It's odd. I think that's all I'm going to say about it.
Could it just be cut from a performance? This whole bit?
Oh yeah, we are kind of, very ahead of you.
Use any loose threads. Although it is a fun scene. I mean, Catherine's quite a nice part actually.
Yeah, some of her speeches were absolutely fabulous, and I've written in my notes but not sure about the rest of the scene. So there is something interesting happening here. It just doesn't fit, and it's sort of that shame. Aliki.
Yeah, it's very rare to see a female character get such courageous and martial and indomitable lines. So it might be fun to pluck out that scene for a collection of martial women. But
I think the scene in isolation has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and so in that sense, it could be done as a separate little piece. And also, there aren't that many speakers, so maybe we'll just record this as a random episode for the podcast one day. Because frankly, if I'm doing a recording of the play, this scene in Act 2 are gone. Can't be asked with them. And structurally, it doesn't matter as well, because we just leap from Lucretia's death to Alexander in the next scene. So there is no gap. There is no untidy reason why you need a scene in between. So That's my feeling. I'm sticking with it. Okay, Act 4, Scene 5. We need to crack on. We enter Alexander out of his study.
Bringing that opium and bowl of wine. Here I must act a tragic comedy. Bernardo, is it well confected and prepared, according to my conference with Rotsie?
Bernardo with a flagon of wine and a bowl.
He sent it, as your holiness may see, safely sealed up.
Fill me that bowl of wine.
Alexander openeth a box and putteth in the powder.
'Tis a drowsy medicine. Do not taste it, my lord.
Thou hast been tasted to me many times. Begin, Bernardo.
My lord, I slept too much the last night, and I dare not.
It holds good colour. Hold here, Bernardo. Give good attendance, bring them to their rest, then give me notice at my study door.
One set was passed before I parted from them, and by this time they be well heated.
Sirrah, be diligent and serviceable in this, even as thou lovest thy master.
Exit Alexander into his study.
Fear me not. Were it not that my conscience hath been fired with flames of purgatory by this pope, I never could endure such villainy. The best is he doth pardon all my sins.
Exit Bernardo, the sophister. Enter Astor and Philippo in their waistcoats with rackets.
This set was strangely lost, I durst have wagered. 100 ducats after the first chase.
You think you play well, but believe me, brother, you cannot take pains not observe a ball with that dexterity which appertaineth.
Oh, allow within it, I'd take no pains. My waistcoat well can witness, for I sweat.
Enter Bernardo.
Barber, bring in some linen for my lords.
Bring me some wine, for I'm very thirsty.
Enter two barbers with linen.
I listened for that string, and he hath touched it.
Will it please your lordship sit on this low chair?
No.
Rub my head first, then comb it.
Fill me some wine, Bernardo.
Good my lord, cool yourself a little.
Oh, give me wine. Let it be thy labour, good Bernardo. Call for music.
Bernardo delivereth wine.
Brother, in this cup I commend the loves of all true Faventines, our trusty friends, hoping ere long to live again with them.
I thank you, brother. If our father Pope perform his promise, we shall soon return.
This wine, good, yet tasteth of the cask, hath a musty relish.
Let's hear this music.
After the barbers had trimmed and rubbed their bodies a little, Astor calleth.
Oh, within that,
My lord?
I think it good after this little rubbing to repose my body.
Oh, I'm somewhat heavy.
I know the cause.
What, Bernardo?
Marry, with much motion of your bodies, my lords, you must not be so vehement in play. I knew a noble Frenchman at Ancona 20 years since. At tennis took his death with overheating of himself in play.
They lay themselves upon a bed, and the barbers depart.
More music there.
After one strain of music, they fall asleep.
My lords are both asleep. Music, depart, and leave them to their ease. Alas, sweet boys, is it not pity that these noble branches, so sweetly knit in one, should never wake? I, that am hard of heart, sigh for their sake. My lord.
Bernardo knocketh at the study.
What news, man?
Both fast asleep.
And both upon one bed?
'Tis done.
And chamber voided?
All is performed, my lord.
My blessing rest upon thee, my Bernardo. Depart now with those letters I delivered. To be conveyed to Florence, leave me here.
Alexander upon the stage in his cassock and nightcap with a box under each arm. Alexander solus.
Sleep both secure upon your fatal bed. Now that the god of silence, Morpheus, hath with his signet of blackness horn sealed up your languid eyelids loaden with pale death. Sleep until you draw your latest breath. Poor harmless boys, strangers to sin and evil. Oh, were my soul as innocent as yours. This office is of highest consequence. In friendship, for I consider it, I sent you from a million of sorrows into the flowery fields of paradise, there to go habit in the groves of myrtle, to feed on manna and to drink pure nectar, a cup of everlasting happiness, where such sweet music unconceivable shall entertain your senses in sweet comfort, as the delight thereof shall never die. Astor, what Astor? Speak awake, Philippo. Both fast asleep.
He stirreth and moveth them, opening both their bosoms.
Now, Roderick, betake thee to thy task. What? Peace. Astor begins to talk. I will attend.
Astor speaketh in his sleep.
Fair gracious angel of eternal light, which reachest out that hand of happiness, hailing my spirit to that triumphant throne of endless comfort, I adore thy grace.
O golden light of never-setting sun, hark, brother Astor, hark, my soul is wrapped into the joys of heaven with harmony.
Do they not sleep? Are they not yet asleep? Be not their senses yet locked up in sleep?
He stirreth them.
Astor, awake, 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 Philippo. All safe and sure. This was but a dream. Their genius hath foretold them of their end, and joyfully they do shake hands with death.
He draweth out of his boxes aspics.
Come out here now, you Cleopatra's birds, fed fat and plump with proud Egyptian slime, of seven-mouthed Nilus, now turned lean.
He putteth to either of their breasts an aspic.
Take your repast upon these princely paps. Now Ptolemy's life is highly magnified in signing these fair princely twins their death. And you, my lovely boys, competitors with Cleopatra, share in death and fate. Now Charon stays his boat upon the strand, and with a rugged forehead full of wrath, he thrusts 1,000,000 from the shore of Styx to give you waftage to the Elysian fields. I see their colours change, and death sits heavy on their fair foreheads with his leaden mace. My birds are glutted with this sacrifice.
He taketh off the aspics and putteth them up in his box.
What now, proud worms? How tastes your prince's blood? The slaves be plump and round into your nests. Is there no token of the serpent's draught, all clear and safe? Well now, fair boys, good night. Bernardo, Bernardo, the feat is done. Use thy discretion, as I did direct.
Exit Alexander.
'Tis done indeed. Alas, they both be dead. Now must I follow my directions. Hola, within there!
Enter Cardinal Caraffa with Bentivoli.
What news, Bernardo?
Alas, my lord, ill news. But that his holiness is fast asleep, and this day stirreth not from his bedchamber, I would have brought him to this woeful sight. Prince Astor with Philippo was at tennis, and being overheated at their game, drinking so suddenly upon that heat with much sweet wine, did surf it instantly. And here, alas, lie dead upon this bed. Alas, it is a ruthful spectacle. 2 princely boys of noble disposition, endued with honourable gifts of virtue.
Of gracious favour, wise and liberal. Fiennes' hope. Bernardo, bear them in. His Holiness will much bemoan their fate.
My lord, I do not like of this.
Peace, man. No more do I. But bear with patience.
It is suspicious, but we may not talk. Come, let us in. Oh, God,
Oh, God. What times are these?
Exeunt them, Bernardo presumably with the bodies, and our chronicler, Francis Guitron, enters.
After the bloody Duke Valentinois had conquered Furley with the warlike lady, by wily force he took in Capua. Then, through insidious sleights and treacheries, he did surprise the state of Camarine, where he captived Giulio de Varana with his 2 sons, all which he strangled. With semblable tyranny, proud Caesar, on terms of trust, meets with the Duke Gravina, and Vitellozzo with the Prince of Furno, whom he betrayed at Sinigaglia, bereaving them both of their estates and lives. He conquereth Urban, and with violence performeth strange and hideous outrages. By this time, with his forces back to Rome, Caesar is marching. What betide there ends in the subject of this tragedy.
And thus ends Act 4. It does feel like everything Francis was talking about there, you know, all this stuff that Caesar's off doing lots of war stuff, lots of exciting war stuff, is just the kind of stuff you put in a chorus because you don't want to put it on stage because it might get a bit tedious. But then somebody did. Anyway, well, to be honest, I thought this scene was going to be a lot worse than it turned out to be. To be honest, when a known pederast hands 2 boys a Mickey Thin, you are sort of expecting that this is going to go badly. It went badly in a different way. I wasn't actually expecting straight out murder. But yeah, that was more death by aspic.
I was so grateful you did that, because I was sitting there going, meat jelly? He's going to
Yeah, snakes. Yeah, bitey, venomousy, snaky.
How did he manage not to get the snakes to bite him, though? I mean, he must be quite practiced in handling these creatures.
He's got gloves.
Gloves, yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's got all the kit. I mean, he is the Pope, so I don't know how thick.
Chainmail gloves.
Yeah.
Or tongs, yeah.
Do you know what the best way to avoid getting bitten by a snake is?
No.
Don't go anywhere near snakes. It's just keep away from them. Just avoid them. They're just don't risk it. They're just horrible. Anyway.
I once had an indigo snake around my neck on a school trip. I think it'd been defanged. It was actually rather nice.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sure some snakes
dry
are
and
lovely,
cool.
But poisonous snakes, just stay away. Anyway, back to the scene. So we've got this sort of lengthy. They draw these scenes out to the, and again, like that scene with Lucretia's death as well, that there's a voyeuristic quality to this scene that is a bit. Because they're lying on the bed and there's music playing and they're falling asleep and then they're speaking in their sleep, and it's just, it's a really weird sort of way
creepy.
of drawing this thing out. Stephen, I think, was waving.
Well, I was kind of going to sort of say that. I mean, they come in and go, "Oh, it's hot in here." It's kind of like it's one step down from calling for the pizza guy, isn't it? This is kind of. But we don't just get that. We get, they've got to take the linen off. There's clean linen brought in. They're being rubbed by these guys. They're being trimmed. Then their clothes are opened by this other dude with the meat jelly. It is really. I'm struggling to think of a scene like it. It's really, really slow, and it sort of seems like a sort of set piece. But it's just kind of wildly discordant in one sense, because it's so, at least potentially, sexy, as it were, or adjacent. But in another sense, it's another one of these really, really intimate murders. Like the sort of murder by perfume or unguents or whatever it was that we looked at last time. It's really, really peculiar aesthetic.
I mean, I can't imagine why James the First would want to watch a scene like this at all.
Yeah.
I mean, watching some meaty boys being massaged, I can't imagine why that might go down well at court. Lois.
No, that's what I was just thinking. I mean, given what everybody probably knew by this time about James and his fondness for good-looking young men, this is an incredibly tactless thing to put on before him. I mean, the sight of an all-powerful ruler engaging in fairly obvious self-indulgence, shall we say? I don't know. I find this really hard to understand.
I mean, who? Do we know how many other people were at the show? Anyway, Sarah.
I think what Stephen said though about the intimacy of the scene, I think he's definitely onto something there, because there are other ways. I just had a quick Google to see how Astor was killed, and he was assassinated. Caesar imprisoned him. He was sent to Rome. He was then assassinated, but I couldn't find out how. So this isn't this is not remotely, factual. So then the playwrights made a choice, and he's made a really weird choice, because I mean the wine could have just been poisoned, for heaven's sake. It could have just been done. I mean, I actually assumed it had been initially, like when they drank I'm like, oh, okay, it's poison wine, they're gonna just die in their sleep, but no. Or he could have smothered them with cushions while they were lying there. There are just so many easier ways to do this, other than this kind of really bizarre ritualistic thing of taking these snakes out of a box and opening the shirt and putting it on the chest. But it just reminded me of what we had yesterday with Lucretia, and that kind of, I was talking about all the stuff being set up around her as like an altar. There's something very ritualistic about these murders, but they're also really intimate. And that's got to be a deliberate thing. It's like, all these interiors, all these very intimate kind of small scenes of murder. Like the murders are kind of, really sensational, but they're done in this kind of very closed space. That's got to be deliberate on the part of the playwright, I think, to kind of create this atmosphere of the house of Borgia turning in on itself, and someone was talking yesterday about the house itself being poisoned, and I think you could really do something with that in a production.
And there's a nice bit of comedy as well. I just like the way the Bernardo says, don't drink this stuff. So he says, you be my taster, you have a go. He says, no, I slept quite a lot. I slept really long last night. I won't, it wouldn't be good for me. Very briefly, Aliki, then Alan, then we must move on.
Just to pick up what Lois was talking about, the last time we saw these young men, they were saying how horrible it is to be a handsome young man being eyed by a powerful older one who can command your services, whether you want to or not. So, in a way, this is almost, this is less offensive, I would have thought, to a king with those inclinations, this scene, than the previous one, because here you get to relish the beautiful young bodies and this sublimated sexual assault with the snakes, instead of hearing it condemned.
Alan?
Yeah, the interesting thing is the analogue between this and the previous scene with the two boys that Caesar's just abducted from their mother Katherine. And it would almost make sense if those scenes with Katherine had occurred much earlier in the play, which would give a backstory for the two boys who we've now met as Philippo and Astor.
No, these are two different. These are young men, not the children boys who are Caterina Sforza's sons. We've got four, as it were.
Anyway, we will move on. Act 5, Scene 1. Enter Caesar after a flourish of trumpets and drums and ensigns and soldiers and Barbarossa, Cardinal Caraffa, Bentivoli and Baglioni.
Now that by cunning force and policy, all the free states and cities of Romania subjected are unto the Church of Rome, and that our pikes and swords in blood and slaughter are stained and sheathed quiet in our scabbards, our blood and wounds staunched and bound up in scarves. Let us for this cold season of the year rest us and cheer ourselves till the next spring, and then march forward with alacrity. Brave Barbarossa, take these soldiers unto some quarter whereby sound of drum, according to their muster, give them pay, let them be satisfied and so discharged. Fellows in arms, faithful and valiant, I thank you for your pains and honesties. In token of our good heart to your service, we give each common soldier more than pay, 2 ducats, and all other officers, according to their place, redoubled, with many thanks for your exceeding valour, assuring you that in these wars with us, Caesar shall make you captains of your spoils, and so he doth commend you to your ease.
Caesar,
Caesar!
God save
God save Caesar!
And exit Barbarossa. Sound trumpets, flourish with drums, marching with soldiers, etc.
Sirrah, come hither, you must wait on me. My good Lord Cardinal and Bentivoli, much thanks and dear acceptance for your loves. I lovingly return for your great pains.
His Holiness gave us in serious charge to give you greeting, and withal prepares a sumptuous feast for that solemnity, to which he doth invite the cardinals, with other lords, your favourers, in Rome.
Humbly commend my duty to my father. Tell him this night I purpose to be with him. I think that's a stage direction there.
Yes.
Is there? Sorry, I...
Pointing.
Pointing at letters in his hand, yes.
Tell him I live in health, and touching these, I pray you certify his holiness. I will have a special care, and so, my lords, for a small season, I will take my leave.
We do congratulate your safe return.
And exit Caraffa and Bentivoli. Caesar looketh on his letters.
Come hither, Baglioni, speak sincerely. Knowest thou Bernardo Rotsie, the apothecary?
What, I, my gracious lord? No, I myself.
Should I know that, sir?
May it please your highness, he serves his holiness.
He did indeed sometime, and for his villainies is worth to be cast off. But tell me, sirrah, thou dost remember how, for breach of arms, when thou didst stab a certain Lance Brisardo, I pardoned thee thy life.
True, my good lord, I very well remember. He was a lousy villain, marry was he, and if he lived yet, such is my stomach, that were he chopped in mammocks, I could eat him. But for that honour in a soldier's word, I'll spend my life to do your highness service.
Hast thou thy piece then ready?
Oh, my good lord lies fixed, sound as a bell, with all my warlike furniture beside. Good flask and a touch box, a Valentia blade, a slavish dagger, powder of reams, and bullets, here they be.
Some time this afternoon within the park next the Vatican, Rotsie will be. As I know thee stout and resolute, bestow a bullet on him as he passeth. Few words, if any man attach thee for it, by my protection thou shalt be enlarged.
And if I do not, my good lord, damn me for it, I have an old grudge at him, coal-black cur. He shall have 2 steel bullets strongly charged. Nay, but hear me, my lord, I'll tell you what, by this true fox of steel, I had as good a spaniel for the water as ever hunted duck. And this true villain, because my dog did eat up a Bernardo within his house, what did that Spanish rogue? What did he, think you, my lord? Marry, very fair and instantly poisoned my spaniel with Rosa Solis. A pox on him, Micah. Faith, I'll pay him his old fippence for now.
Take this to buy thee clothes, my trusty servant. Nay, 'tis gold, be not afeard of it.
Afeard, my lord? Were it a tempest and a shower of gold, I would endure it and adore you for it.
Then, Baglioni, fit thee to thy furniture. Watch in a corner close beyond some tree, and when the deed is done, repair to me. Say that thy piece went off against thy will. Keep a light match in cock, wear flask and touch box, and take a murrain with thee. So farewell. Thus must I dive deep in a villain's nature, and thus must save a villain from the gallows, to make my part in other purposes. The man whom I to benefit would choose, I must in matters of moment use, or else I will not befit a man, and cut him off in sequel, if I can.
Hear me, but my good lord, mark my words well. If old Henrilico shrink in this service, cashier him, call him whipstock, let him perish for want of Spanish wines and malusy.
Then fail not my true servant, finely, closely.
Exit Caesar.
No more, but by this cross, why now this noble Caesar's like himself hath fitted me with service. If the world had sought out somewhat to content a man, nothing could better please old Balian than to kill a rascal, coward, cur, a Spanish squirt-up, a black poisoning toad. I like this trading better than the wars, for there I serve for 2 ducats a month, and not a duck egg richer when I march, and in continual hazard of my life, for which per case my piece kills 20 persons. Now shall I march in my purse with many ducats, for 1 hour's service but to kill 1 man. Free from all danger of mine enemy, I will about it and take up my stand.
And exit. So, mates of the and wizarding dueling partner of Frescobaldi from the other day is also in the same line of business. Will it go well for this one as it did for the other? Similar sort of question of not so much CV, but more enthusiasm. Yeah, I'd like to kill him as well. Yeah, I'm all for the killing.
Yeah, it's better than being a soldier.
Yeah. So yeah, quite a long scene for what a relatively simple setup for a murder, but we got a bit of martial tidying up from before, which again feels like it's more covering for a scene we shouldn't have had rather than the scene we actually did. So yeah, any additional thoughts about this scene and Baglioni, Sarah?
I was a bit confused by this scene, actually, as to what was actually happening. So, Rotsie is the apothecary who's been supplying Alexander with various things, nefarious or otherwise. And Caesar is now wanting him murdered and has asked, paid Baglioni to do it. Did it come out as to why? I got why Baglioni was taking the commission, because he's like, yeah, I need to get my revenge on him because he poisoned my dog. But like, why was Caesar? Why does Caesar want Rotsie dead? I think I missed something. Because
remember, Caesar's on the other side of Alexander, so we've got 2 warring factions going on here. Lois may have more on this.
Well, I don't know. I thought it was also one of these he knows too much things. You know?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because they're not really on the same, they're not really on opposite sides. I mean, the last scene they were in together, they were like shaking hands and like, yeah, we're going to.
Yeah, we believe that.
Well, yeah, but like, but there hasn't been anything to kind of.
He got him out of the city with an army. That's what he did.
But because
he
said,
asked, would you like a lovely commission? Off you go.
But he asked for that commission. It's like he gave him what he wanted.
Yeah, to get rid of him.
Well, yeah, but it's like I don't know. I feel like there was a little piece missing there somehow. That, I mean, you can infer it easily enough, but
It's not like Caesar has some relationship with Astor or Philippo who've just died. He's not doing it in revenge.
Exactly.
I think he's just removing Alexander's power base of murderiness.
Or is he doing it for Alexander because of what Lois said? Like he knows too much. Like I don't quite know what his motivation is. Like whether he's doing it for Alexander or against him or what.
Then again, does it matter? So long as there's a murder happening, then the play's fine. Aliki, then Lois.
Yeah, I mean, the last time Caesar hired somebody to murder somebody for him, he did kill him immediately afterwards. So maybe that's just what he thinks you need to do when somebody's helped you murder somebody or helped your father murder somebody.
Lois.
Yeah, and that is what he says in his aside at the end of that speech, that first he says, I'll get you off. You can say that the gun went off accidentally. And then he says in asides that he's, of course, he's got to use him again, but once he's used him, he'll cut him off. I think this is all derived from the Spanish tragedy, where you've got Lorenzo, getting two villains and getting one to kill the other, and then getting one arrested for it, and so on. I mean, it's this. It derives from this whole notion about tool villains and using them and then using them against each other.
Mm. Whereas previously, just chucked him over a bridge, which seems like a much more efficient way. Just do the second murder yourself. Why have it? Because he's only going to have to kill the murderer of the murderer. It's a never-ending thing. At some point, your hands have to get dirty. Anyway, let's get on to this murder, shall we? It's something to do. Act 5, Scene 2. Enter Bernardo.
Thus doth one hideous act succeed another, until the mouth of mischief be made up. Now must I train my fellow to his death, a deed of such, and I did swear the same, not only for the secrecy thereof, but to conceal a matter of more weight, of greater moment, and high cruelty. When any deed of murder must be done to serve his holiness, call for Bernardo. He must be principal or accessory to serve all purposes, for gold or pardon. The Pope gives both, and I can take them both. Gold can make hard the softest conscience, and mine is hardened by the practice of it. Hola, Signor Bandino.
He knocketh at the door. Enter Rotsie.
Who calls without there? Oh, my good fellow Bernardo, very welcome. What's news with you?
My lord hath sent me for the things he spake of.
Here they be, very strong and sufficiently compounded, according to directions from his holiness, and special warrant under his previous signet. I tried them on 3 men condemned to death for rapine and vile murder. The first, within less than 1/4 of an hour, puffed up, grew leprous, and his heartstrings broke.
Enter Baglioni with his piece.
And did I give a lay the second time? The second prisoner died within 3 hours. I did the third time mitigate a little, and so when it was ministered, the third man, who did within 8 hours, swell, rage, and die.
Well, have you done your part? Set down your bottles and read this letter from the Duke Valentois.
He setteth down his bottles, and walking readeth to himself.
Well said, brave how do you say that? Panko Ginger, by mine honour. Before I do this service, lie there, peace, for I must have a saying to those bottles.
He drinketh.
True, Stingo, by mine honour. Oh, what mine old friend and Boccadillo Frescobaldi, we are here alive again to taste of this other bottle. Well, I will venture on it that I may drink with one health. To Frescobaldi I will encounter with this stout Hectorian Greek. Were Meleager here that slew the boar, like a Baraccio armed all in sack, or stout Achilles in a pewter coat, or old Asacharis armed in a wicker lurkin, or Priamus armed with a leather jacket, lined and embossed with elegant and hollock, by force of arms and Mars his valiant hand, I would encounter them whilst I could stand. The slaves are busy reading their Paphlagonian papers. I must have a saying to you, sir. I must, though. You be provided for his holiness' own mouth. I will be. Bold to the Pope's taster by his leave. Now, trusty Troilus, baze los manos.
Malone, it is the Duke's pleasure that if he will taste, he shall be suffered. And therefore I was commanded to set them down in presence of such a fellow, whom for his sauciness I have peppered.
Oh, 'tis a perilous villain. If you knew him so well as I, believe me, he would pepper you for it if he understood so much. Oh, peace, man, he hath broken up the bottle. Let him drink.
Let him drink and burst. For believe me, I was informed before of such a fellow, for whom I was commanded to lay bait. A notable villain. How he sealeth death.
This is a noble nipster, faith, so.
He drinketh.
Back again to kennel, slave.
He hath his full wages, no doubt, Bernardo, to serve him till he die. Seem not to respect him in any case, do I pray you?
Nay, but do not you respect him, lest he doubt you suspect him.
doubt you not, doubt you not. I will never look. Let us turn our talk. Tell His Holiness 'tis well compounded and composed of all those drugs mentioned in your letter. Give the Duke right humble thanks for his token, and with all reverence kiss his excellent hand.
And by this signet you are to deliver me the bottles.
Have a care of them, and deliver them.
Bernardo receiveth the bottles.
Farewell, fellow Rotsie.
Adieu, Bernardo.
Now, do not I pity this Spanish villain because he consented to the poisoning of this soldier. But for that, I am innocent.
They go forth two several ways, and Rotsie is shot by Baglioni.
What? Is the wild goose fallen? Haven't you, sir? Might a poor spot soldier speak half a score words to your venomous worship, and according to your accustomed surliness have no reply all? I believe you, sir. Your words are not offensive in any sort, I must confess. Now, thou infectious slave, thou compictuous rascal, thou confectionary villain, where is your sublimatum now, sir? Where is your rat's bonantum now? Where are your poisoned pullets and stewed broth? Where be they? You never dreamt of a poisoned bullet, did you? Go to now. Now, Signor Currigantino, I will rummage in the worm-eaten keel of your rotten hulk. Passion of my soul, what papers are these? Foh, powder, foh, what's here? Ay, marry, sir, I like this well. Are you so pursy, sir? This may serve to stop a gap in my neighbour's hedge. What is this you show me with a shame to you? Yea, and master of the small ordinance to this basilisk hath been often mounted, where there hath been hot and dangerous service in the Isle of Japan. Whole passion of me, my guts, out upon thee, thou hast poisoned me with thy stinking breath, and with thy villainous powders. Out, that's what searing commotions I feel in my body, gripping, fretting, and sobbing. Oh, a plague on your bottle ale with a vengeance. I am peppered. There's no remedy in all these extreme agonies. Must draw this villain further and throw him into a ditch. Yea, Veleno del Diabolo, farewell, my old Chantigillo Frescobaldi. Farewell, Madam Semprona, for in conscience I'm of guilty of mine own death. Oh, the pangs of hell and purgatory. Come, you lousy rascal, I will bury thee with carrion in the next ditch.
He draweth in Rotsie by the heels, groaning. I like the fact that even though he's dying, he's still going to tidy up. I mean, you know, that is conscientious, isn't it? So it's a double simul murder. Because Rotsie does say he's left the bottle there deliberately. I was told I should just leave it lying around and he'd drink it. And it's like, they know their marks well. You know, they've really briefed them as to the best way to take him down. So I'm going to take back to a degree what I said earlier about the sort of random Wizard Off Dungeons and Dragons fest that we had between Baglioni and Frescobaldi the other day, because it does have a payoff here, actually. Thoughts in the room, Stephen?
You were talking about the problem of the sort of infinite regress of assassins, and the play seems to have solved it by having the assassin being an absolute idiot. This is. I'm really interested in these clown assassin figures. You know, they're kind of really hungry and they're really quarrelsome, and they wouldn't at all be out of place in a play just sort of arguing about a posset or something. And yet here they're kind of offing people. So it's an outrageously stupid thing. It's kind of like, I'm about to kill this apothecary. He's put a bottle down. Oh, I'm thirsty. I'll wine. Oh, that's handy. I find it difficult to believe that this would have been received entirely straight.
No.
This really weird, strange mutation where you're getting these sort of conflicting signals, because again, this is so much of an old school sort of just simpleton clown, all that stuff with the language. It's kind of Simon Eyre-ish, isn't it? The Shoemakers, this kind of inventiveness, and yet it's been coupled to, yoked with violence together with.
Yes, this play. This play is killing off all its clowns. It's literally killed 2 of them off. And it's not holding back. I mean, frankly, the one who should be most afraid for his life is Bernardo, because he's the stamper of this crew. When any deed of murder must be done to serve His Holiness, call for Bernardo.
That's a call, Bernardo.
That should be on his business card, really, shouldn't it? So, I mean, if anyone who's the weakest link in your chain of liabilities, it's him. He's really got to be watching over his shoulder. I mean, the thing is, Bernardo's clearly clever in a way that other people aren't. So, Sarah.
Yes, it's like clowns fighting over a poison posset in this in this case. I'm just really interested in how you'd stage this, because it's like it's almost like it's an indoor scene and an outdoor scene. It's like they're inside the apothecary, and then Baglioni's like hanging around outside, and does he put the bottles on a windowsill or something? Or because they can't possibly all be in the same room, because even Baglioni surely is not that daft. So I'd be interested to see how you'd stage it without like stretching the audience's suspension of disbelief to the point where it snaps. But you could definitely have fun doing it.
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, what I also like about Baglioni is not only does he nix the bottle, he puts his gun down while he does it. It's like, hang on, poisoner puts his poison down. The gunman puts his gun down. I mean, it's like they're very, very. They're not child friendly. These people, are they? I wouldn't want to go around their house, for a children's party, because it would just be it would be a death trap. Anyway, Lois.
Yeah, I think it's all outside. I mean, it says he, that is Bernardo, knocketh at a door, enter Rotsie, and then he says, who calls without there? That is Rotsie does. So he's clearly coming out of his shop, and then so everything is taking place outside. Baglioni seems to do, there's a kind of classic clown shtick, I think, of talking to the bottle you're drinking out of. I mean, I've seen this in an awful lot of other plays anyway. You don't just drink, you say, oh, hello, bottle, how are you? And then you drink out of it, and then you chat a bit more, and then you find another bottle and personify it and so on. He's doing all that as well.
And then he talks to a corpse as well. I mean, he does like using his inanimate objects.
Yeah, there was a really weird moment where it was almost like Hamlet talking to Yorick, saying, "Where be your jibes now? Where be this is?"
And you were doing so well. There were so many other options earlier, and you had to leap for that one. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. We're obviously talking about the.
Well, it's the Ubi Sunt tradition. I think we got Basilico doing it, and Solomon and Preseda as well. Yeah.
Right, anyway,
Nice
we need to move on. We have a lot of text to get through. We're going to run the next 2 scenes into each other. Act 5, Scene 3, Alexander and Caesar Borgia.
Have you Sorry, I've lost my text. Have you delivered to the bottleman the fatal wine?
I gave charge to Bernardo, having them safely sealed with mine own signet, that when feasting I do call for wine, he shall break up the seals and fill that out. For the 2 cardinals, Cornetto and Modina.
'Tis well. Now if our plot prove right, thou shalt be master of much wealth tonight. Dying in a state, all comes to my share. Caraffa loves a salad passing well, and I have fitted one to serve his turn. Their gold will I make thy soldiers fight in blood, and wing thy victories with good success.
Let us no longer entertain the time. By this, the cardinals expect our presence.
On with auspicious steps, triumphant Caesar, and entertain them in brave jollity.
And they exit, having for once given us some reasonably useful exposition. Act 5, Scene 4, sound loud music. A cupboard of plate brought in. Enter with bottles, Bernardo with the bottleman.
Have special care, you that have these in charge, that these 2 sealed bottles be not stirred until his holiness call forth that wine.
Fear not, I will attend it as my life.
Sound trumpets, solemnly. Enter a table spread. Viands brought in. After the trumpets sound drums. Enter Alexander in his pontificals. After him Cornetto with Caesar. Barbarossa with Modina. Bentivoli with Caraffa. The Pope taketh his place. 3 cardinals on one side and captains on the other.
Marshal yourselves here, sworn men, and there, churchmen.
Here sit we, swordsmen, to defend the church.
My lords, give answer in sincerity. Hath not my Caesar fought well for the church, that hath so soon subjected in her right Imola, Furli, Camarino, Capua, Urbine, Faenza, Sinigalia? Brave Caesar, I must boast of it in the presence, that I, Christ's vicar of his church on earth, have such a son which issued from my loins, that being vicar of the church's wars, hath in revolution of 1 year done more than all the generals have done in honour of our church for 40 years.
Your Holiness, with all your cardinals, your barons, and indeed all Christendom, are bound to give God thanks for such a prince, and him great honour for his fortitude.
The devil cometh, and changeth the Pope's bottles.
Your Excellence did, in a blessed hour, surrender up your holy robes and hat, betaking you to Burgonet and arms, by which you might enlarge our liberties.
You might, my lord, and see, we have all of us good cause to rejoice. Would I have been with your Excellence at Capua? I would have had one boat with them, as old as I am.
You might, my lord, have had your choice of ladies, beautiful prisoners, to be sent to Rome.
Ay, marry, my lord. Somewhat might have been said to this gear in dicbus illis, but transient cum ceteris erroribus. Would to God I were as young as as when I was a scholar in Padua. Faith, then I could have swinged a sword and a buckler, and I did that. Then will being but a springall of 24 years, which be talked of in Padua these 40 years, I warrant it. Faith, my lord, were I so lusty now, I would go with you to the wars this next spring. That's flat. Will you eat any salad, my lord? Faith, here are excellent herbs if you love them.
They be, my lord, too cold for my stomach. Would it please you, my lord, to drink a cup of old Greek wine with it? Bring me some wine here.
Bring me some wine here. I will drink a joy to Caesar and this noble company.
Some wine for his holiness' own mouth, Bernardo.
Wine is brought to Alexander.
Caesar, yourself are master of this feast. I drink a good success and victory to Caesar and great happiness to all.
Alexander drinketh. Trumpets sound.
Happy success and fortune to you all.
Caesar drinketh.
Hold, Caesar, stay, for we are poisoned.
Rush from the table.
My lord, it's all of...
Then art thou quite undone?
Some villainous conspiracy lies hid within this company, and this pernicious villain hath practised it with them. Go with thy soul to hell, I feel the raging of it.
Caesar stabbeth Bernardo.
Away, my lord Modina, come away. This train was laid of purpose for our lives.
Our refuge and defence is from above. Let Satan work. He never shall prevail.
Exit Cornetto and Modina.
How doth my gracious lord?
Oh, very sick. Bring me preservatives. I think I have as good as any man.
Alexander to his study.
My lord Bentivoli, take here my keys. You know my study. Search my cabinet. There shall you find a little crystal phial wrapped up in sarsenet. Bring it hither straight. I feel Venetus raging in my guts.
Exit Caesar.
Here, Caesar, taste some of this precious water. Against all plague, poison, and pestilence, a present help. I brought it of a Jew, born and brought up in Galilee.
Caesar tasteth.
My lord, it is too forcible and hot.
The flames of Mongibel consume my liver. Bring me to some repose.
Comfort yourself, my lord.
Caesar, take rest. Send for physicians. All my fear remains that Caesar shall miscarry.
And all my grief that both, noble Bentivoli, withdraw we both unto my chamber. I'm very sick.
And they exit. So, I mean, this is one of the things about poison plots. You've got to really distance yourself from where the poison is. Don't do this whole thing, oh, there's a thing over here, we've got an antidote, let's all have it, or that thing, because we've had the antidote thing as well in other plays. And just, it was asking for, I mean, to be fair, he didn't know he was going to be double-crossed by Satan. Who guessed that's what was going to happen there? I didn't see that coming. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, right back at the beginning of that sequence, it felt to me like there are one or two speeches misattributed, because I think one or two of the lines that were down as Caesar should have been Alexander and vice versa. And also in this final sequence, we got a situation where Caesar's shown as exit.
No, the exit, I was wrong. I think it's Bentivoli that exits there.
Right.
I just read that wrong. It may be, but they're sort of both doing similar jobs throughout, so it is a bit difficult to tell who's doing what at times there. But yeah, and then they stab Stamper. It's just like, you betrayed us. Yeah, he doesn't even get a last word, does he? Does he say anything in the entire scene apart from some bottles?
He's not dead yet.
Is he not dead?
He's got chances.
Well, yeah, we shall see. I suspect he probably is.
We haven't had him dying on stage, let's put it that way.
He got stabbed, and I don't see his name coming up anywhere later on, so I think Bernardo's gone. I mean, I don't know who cleaned him up, but, hey-ho. So that was fun. A bit rushed. I don't know. It all just sort of happened all at once. Stephen, then Sarah, then we must move on.
Well, I'm not 100% sure on this, but my understanding is that if we've got James watching this, that there's going to be a particular arrangement of the audience, which is kind of having them all oriented towards James. I just thought it was interesting that we have a kind of challenge or parallel to that, because it's very careful to tell us there's a certain kind of arrangement of the Pope with all of everybody else kind of taking their place next to him. And I just wondered about that in staging terms, whether that was this kind of intentional mirroring, or whether the kind of royal spectators would not be configured in the same way. But it would be a really kind of nice stage shorthand for showing that you can't have both of these things. One is a direct challenge to the other.
Sarah. Muted at present.
I found that scene slightly anticlimactic, given what's come before. Given, you've got the two lead protagonists here being offed, plus their henchman, offed in one scene. And given, like, the last set of murders that we had, with the brothers, and then Lucretia yesterday, they were so fabulously staged, albeit weird, but fabulous. And all that interiority I was talking about earlier, and they were kind of, even though you knew what was kind of coming, it was kind of gripping to see it unfold, and slightly sensationalist. This kind of feels slightly flat, and
well, the play's not. There are two more scenes to go yet, Sarah.
Yeah, but it's like, okay.
Is this the climax?
Maybe it isn't. I shall wait and see. But I really hope it isn't, because that just felt a bit rubbish in comparison to what we've had beforehand.
Okay, Act 5, Scene 5. Enter Astaroth and calleth...
Belchar, Belchar, Belchar.
Varca, Varca, Varca.
Astaroth, Astaroth, Astaroth.
The devils meet and embrace.
Let Orcus, Erebus, and Acheron, and all those ghosts which haunt the pitchy vaults of coal-black hags in Cimmerian shades, muster themselves in numbers numberless to dance about the ghost of Alexander.
Our fiery region, void of all religion, a devilish order by necessity, compelled requires his present policy.
that fatal wine which for his cardinals he destined, I took out of the place and placed his own wine for those cardinals.
The date of his damnation is at hand.
Be ready, then, for I the first will bear as swift as whirlwind his black soul to Styx.
And I, with poisoned toads, will stop his mouth, whose heart was never satisfied with lust.
And I, with snakes and stinging scorpions, will scourge him for his pride and insolence.
And I, with force of fiends, will haul his limbs and pull them till he stretch at anchor length.
And for his avarice, I will fill his paunch with store of molten gold and boiling lead.
Then let us, for his sake, a hornpipe tread.
They dance an antic. Yes.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
No one expects the hornpipe.
No one expects a hornpipe from the. I mean, who knew that demons had that particular taste in music? I mean, yeah. And now Shalimar. It's his odd musical choice. But hey, but it's nice. It's nice that the demons do explain what happened in the previous scene, because you could have missed it actually as to what the demon was doing, depending on how the demon bit is swapping the things is done. I'm liking this tying into the very opening of the play. I feel that there's some overlapping stuff. I think maybe we don't have the dancing, or we just change the term hornpipe to something else, because it just makes me think of comedy. Any brief thoughts on our demons here? They've got some nice things planned for hell. Poison toads to stop his mouth. Scorpions scourge him for his pride and insolence. I think the filling his paunch with store of molten gold and boiling lead. That's a particularly nasty one. So yeah, they're doing well.
Yes, they all fit exactly each sin, don't they? It's punishment fitting the crime very nicely.
Mm. So yeah, they're they could only run to 3 devils, not 7. But what can you do? Okay. Final scene then. Let's after the dancing, if we're all danced out. Act 5, Scene 6. Alexander unbraced betwixt 2 cardinals in his study, looking upon a book, whilst a groom draweth the curtain.
You talk of penance and of penitence, compunction with contrition and remission for all my sins. I pray you think of yours. You vex yourselves too much. I cannot thank you. Have patience, sirs. Oh, it is a goodly exorcism. Quim penitet peccasse paena est innocens. Give leave, come hither when I call, either mere fools or good physicians all.
They place him in a chair upon the stage. A groom setteth a table before him.
Nay, leave me, good my lords. Fain I would meditate. Leave me, I pray you.
Sarah, Caraffa.
I do beg your pardon.
We leave our prayers with your holiness. Call upon God. Think of his endless bounty.
Pray for yourselves. Trouble not me with prayers. I pray you trouble not yourselves with praying.
Exit Caraffa, etc., leaving Alexander solus.
What is repentance? Have I not forgotten?
He looketh upon a book.
Why, repentance is a spiritual martyrdom, which mortifieth sins and heals the soul. Having been wounded with the Spirit's sword, this sword God's book, that book by me profaned, and by which book of God my soul is damned. I damned undoubtedly. O wretched Alexander, slave of sin and of damnation! What is he that can deliver thy poor soul? Oh, none but he that when thou didst renounce him cast thee off thee. Repentance is in vain, mercy too late. Oh, why should miserable mortal man, whose languishing breath lives in his nostrils, vex and torment himself with daily travel, to scrape up heaps of gold, to gape for honours? What were the conquests of great Alexander, of Sirius, Caius Caesar? What were it to be possessed of this universe and leave it all behind him in a moment? Might some one man attain that happiness which our first Adam had in paradise before he did prevaricate? Why then, it were a work of lasting worthiness to rip the bowls of our mother Ops for treasure, and to conquer all the world because eternity would promise it. Out, alas, my pains, my guts, my liver, and yet I fear it not, though in security. Once more I will with powerful exorcisms invoke those angels of eternal darkness to show me now the manner of death.
Alexander draweth the curtain of his study, where he discovereth the devil sitting in his pontificals. Alexander crosseth himself, starting at the sight.
What, dost thou start, foul child of reprobation? Vain are thy crosses, vain all exorcisms. Those be no fruits of faith, but mere hypocrisy. Signa te temere me tangis et angis, Roma tibi subito motis ibat amor. Rome, which was once thy glorious concubine, hath now forsaken thee. Now doth she find thy falsehood, which did her adulterate. What, dost thou tremble, slave of sin and hell?
Alexander taketh his book of magic, the devil laugheth.
I exorcise thee, foul malignant spirit, in the names of
Of what? Foul mouth, polluted soul, corrupted flesh? God hath forsaken thee. Thy date expired, it thy power determined.
Dissolve, break, black soul, dissolve, and poison all this hemisphere with sin.
Thy death and dissolution stand at door. Resolve now to dissolve. Thy soul is ours.
Proud Lucifer, traitor to great Jehovah, father of lies, my time is not expired. I will not do that violence to God, taking that which is his from him, to be bestowed on his great enemy.
Thou that hast thrown those graces in his face, how canst thou think upon salvation? Think that thou art damned. I will declare it plainly.
They sit together.
7 years are yet to come. I look for them.
Examine thy soul with this counterpart.
Behold it. Is it not for 8 years and 8 days?
Ah, thou fool. Examine in arithmetic. Numbers without distinction placed thus: annos with the figure 11, signifying 11 years, and the figure 7 applied to dies, importing 7 days.
How's that? Del quella malita del diabolo, de quello ivleno del inferno. And for what stands this figure then?
Why, for 18, this figure stands for octavo, referred unto die last before, signifying the 8th day after. So that annos undicem, without distinction, signifying 11 years, and this figure 7 added to days, and that octavo post, importing the 8th day following moriere. Thou shalt die, I mean thy body, with thy soul in respect of heaven. Thus many days hast thou continued pope, and this is thy last day, designed by fate.
Thou canst not mock me with thy sophistry. My soul is more divine and cannot perish.
Thy soul, foul beast, is like a menstruous cloth, polluted with unpardonable sins.
Know then, malignant angel of confusion, my soul is a divine light, first created in likeness lively, formed to the Word, which Word was God, that God the cause of causes. My soul is substance of the living God, stamped with the seal of heaven, whose character in his eternal word, at which hell trembles.
And what of that? Thou therein hast no part. I do confess thy soul was first ordained to good, but by free will to sin, thou slave, hast sold that soul from happiness to hell.
Mark yet what I can answer for this soul. Mighty Jehovah, most exuberant, two creatures made in feature like himself, the world and man. World, reasonable and immortal. Man, reasonable but dissoluble and mortal. And therefore man was called microcosmos, the little world and second type of God, containing those high faculties and functions and elements which are within the world. Man then that doth participate with all through operation, conversation, and symbolization, with matter in the subject properly, with the elements in body quadriferi, with growing plants in virtue vegetative, in sense with beasts, with heavens by the influence of the superior spirits into the inferior, in wisdom and capacity with angels, with Elohim in that great continent, is without doubt preserved by that God, finding all things contained in himself.
Answer me, vain philosopher, to this. Thou that hast planted man in this perfection, not looking on thy detestable soul, which first, like a pure leaf of whitest lily, clear from all blemish, was bestowed by God, and thou, foul beast, didst shamefully pollute it. Is it not one of human faculties to propose for yourselves the best you can, where other creatures carried with blind force make themselves bondslaves to the present time? The scope of man's creation was to glorify the most all-potent maker of all things, the Alpha and Omega of all bounty. But he that willfully betrays this soul, that precious jewel wherein God delights, dishonors God, and doth deprive himself of all salvation and beatitude.
Rest with this answer, that my soul is God's, whose habitacle is prepared in heaven. First, it doth know God being figured according to that image of himself, and then the world whose lively shape it bears, and to conclude the soul of man knows all, because with all things it doth symbolize. For in this man there is a mind intelligent, a quickening word, and a celestial spirit, that like a lightning every way diffused, all things which are made by the mighty power, uniteth, moveth, and replenisheth.
These things should have been thought upon before. The summum bonum which lives in the soul is an eternal pleasure to behold, and have fruition of the mighty power which thou didst never see nor canst enjoy.
Pause yet a little, let me meditate.
Alexander holdeth up his hands, wringing and softly crying.
Mercy, mercy, arise, arise. Up, up, fie, fie, no, no. Sir, stubborn, stony, stiff, indurate heart, not yet up. Why? What? Wilt thou not, foul traitor, to my soul? Not yet?
The devil laugheth.
Arise, arise, advance, heart clogged with sin, oppressed with damnation and damnation. Up, advance yet. Wilt thou not stir, stiff heart? What? Am I damned? Yet a little, yet a little. Oh, yet, not yet. Alas, high God of heavens and earth, if thou bear love unto the soul of sinful man, show mercy. Mercy, good Lord. Oh, mercy, mercy, mercy. Oh, save my soul out of the lion's paws, my darling from the den of black damnation. My soul, my dove, cover with silver wings, her down and plumage make of fine tried gold. Help, 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 above, stir, stir, stupidity.
He charms in David's words with Judas' spirit.
It will not, no, it will not. Yet alas, no, no, no. Is that my sentence to damnation? I am undone, undone.
He shall despair. Vassal of sin and hell, provide thyself in black despair to dwell.
He seizeth on his face.
I tell thee, I cannot be resolved to dwell in darkness break black soul, dissolve, and poison all his hemisphere with sin.
Here Alexander is in extreme torment and groaneth, whilst the devil laugheth at him.
And if I may not reach that happiness, since for my son's sake I did myself enthralled, tell me, shall Caesar die this death with me?
Caesar, his youth and strength of blood drives out this fatal poison, and shall live a while.
Oh, show me then the manner of his death.
Attend it. Time grows short. All fear is past.
And the devil bringeth from the door Lucretia's ghost, and after her the ghost of Candy stabbed.
What means that ghastly shadow which came first?
By that which represents Lucretia, leprous and poisoned, is thy death declared, by poison which now struggleth with thy spirits, and by that other which sets out to thee, the murder of thy son, the Duke of Candy. Prefigured is the death of thy son, Caesar. Thou, for the poisoning of thy daughter, poisoned. He, for the murdering of his brother, murdered.
Thus God is only just.
The devil cannot deny it.
Man only false. Learn, miserable, wretched, mortal men, by this example of a sinful soul, what are the fruits of pride and avarice, of cruel empire and impiety, of profanation and apostasy, of brutish lust, falsehood and perfidy, of deep dissembling and hypocrisy. Learn, wicked worldlings, learn by me, to save your souls, though I condemned be.
Sound a horn within. Enter a devil like a post.
Oh, here comes a fatal message. I must hence.
Exit devil.
My robes. He robs me of my robes. Bring me my robes, or take away my life. My robes, my life, my soul, and all is gone.
Alexander falleth in an ecstasy upon the ground. Oh, have I given a devil number 2? No, I haven't. Devil, who wants to be a devil? Go on. Leap in.
Well, I don't mind.
No, so devil. It says devil 2, so it's different devil.
Yeah.
Go, Sarah.
From the pale horror of eternal fire am I sent with the wagon of blackness, to guide thy spirit to the gates of death. Therefore I summon thee to come with speed, for horizons now stand thee not in stead.
And Alexander advanceth a little.
Horror and horror, fear ensueth fear. Torment with torments is encompassed. Despair upon despair, damnation upon damnation, hell and conscience, mirth, lust, avarice, impiety, vain profanation and apostasy, rage and distraction, tyrannize away, away, proud Lucifer, away.
Away! Away!
The devil windeth his horn in his ear. And there more devils enter with a noise encompassing him. Alexander starteth.
Holla, 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 come. What, when, where, when? Why, death, strike, dead, alive. Oh, alas, alas. Always burning, always freezing, always living, tormented, never ending, never mending. Out. Why, weather, feather.
Feather.
Thunder and lightning. With fearful noise the devils thrust him down and go triumphing. Enter Cardinals and Bentivoli.
What? Is he dead?
Dead, and in such a fashion as much affrights my spirits to remember. Thunder and fearful lightning at his death. Outcries of horror and extremity.
Cause all your bells to ring, my lords of Rome. Rome is redeemed from a wicked pope.
God hath beheld us with his eyes of mercy. His name be glorified. Join all in prayer and give him praise that took away your shame.
Go your processions, sing your litanies, and let your churches throng with multitudes. banquets and bonfires through the city make, in sign our church is freed from infamy.
Even as his spirit was inflate with pride, behold his body, puffed up with poison. His corpse shall be conveyed to St. Peter's, open for all beholders, that they may see the reward of sin, amend and pray.
And our narrator figure re-enters. Enter Francis.
The omnipotent great guider of all powers, whose essence is pure grace and heavenly love, as he with glory crowns heroic actions, bearing a taste of his eternal virtue, so semblably doth he with terror strike in heavy vengeance sins detestable, as in this tragic mirror to your eyes our scene did represent in Alexander, flagacious Caesar, his ambitious son, reserved for more calamities to come. After he was imprisoned by the church, escaped into the kingdom of Navarre, unto King John, then brother to his wife, where in an ambush at Viano slain, just Nemesis repaid his treachery.
And we have an epilogue.
Heroic and benevolent spectators, your gracious ears and curious observations, judicious censures and sweet clemency have thus addressed our tragic theatre to exchange contentment for benignity, humbly devoted to your good desires. Some delight, cause of discourse for others, for all example and for none offence. Your favours are a royal recompense, which when our lofty muses shall perceive, then in more pompous and triumphant state, your eyes with glory shall the deed receive of mighty monarchs, kings, and change of fate. By me, those persons which are seen presented, kiss all your hands, and wish you well contented.
And exit. Okay, I'm gonna come out and say I really liked a lot of that scene, but by God, there was a lot of that scene. I mean, the idea of its sound, but I think you've just got to fillet it, because I really love the idea that the devil turns up and says, I think you'll find if you look at the small print, actually, it's your mortgage has your life's mortgage is in arrears by considerably more than you expected, and in fact, we're repossessing this particular property now, which is again very Faustus-y. The whole thing is reeking of Faustus. But this is reeking again also of the punctiliousness of the source for Faustus as well, where the amount of detail that goes into the legal arrangements from Satan's lawyers is really wonderfully excessive. I mean, you don't have to write out your agreement with Satan in blood once; you have to do it twice. Poor bugger must have absolutely completely drained of blood by the time he's done it in triplicate. Yeah, I really like the idea of this scene, but there's just too much of it. He's just gone on, and he just keeps racking it up. I love the fact that we have this sort of dumb show of the fate of people. I'm slightly disappointed we don't see the fate of Caesar. If we saw that in Dumb Show, which we could add that in. That would be really satisfying, because we were talking about that previous scene of they're all dying being a bit swift, whereas this scene is actually this is the death scene. This is the summation of everything. That's sort of just the setting it up. But yes, I feel a little pruning is in order there. Lois, then Stephen.
Well, yeah, it's a pity that Caesar just gets bumped off in the in Guicciardini's last speech, which just says in an ambush at Viano slain, big deal. So it's, I suppose that's because it isn't shown earlier. But I also wondered whether they were planning a sequel to this, the wonderful exploits of Cesare Borgia, in his death. There's plenty of scope.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. Stephen.
Back to the kind of Marlovian riff. I really liked the kind of challenge to the sort of mighty line thing. There's this complete incoherence of just monosyllable after monosyllable. So instead of this kind of glorious scholarly, kind of disquisition, you've got, what, when, where, death, strike. what an audition piece that would be if you had the kind of ovaries of steel to actually do it, because it's so far from what we think this sort of thing should be. Again, coming back to the idea that this is everybody can see that this is a kind of a riff on something really, really famous. I like the idea that this is not just because he can't knock out decent blank verse, but that he's actually trying something different here, which is to refuse all of that and just go, actor, I know you can act, here you are.
Yes. If you are about to be dragged to hell, you are bricking it. You are not going to be doing neat, tidy verse structure, are you? Lots of hands. I go to Sarah, then Aliki, then Lois.
Yes, I have to say, I would be tempted to absolutely keep the ghosts of Lucretia and Candy, but actually do away with that bit about, what's going to happen to Caesar? Because actually his final line in the scene before the devils turn up is something like, I am very ill. You could have him expire in spectacular fashion on the stage there.
But history, Sarah. History.
Oh, history is so important. I mean, excuse me. According to history, Lucretia's still alive for another 20 years. So, he could expire there and then, because that scene with Alexander and the devil, to me, it makes sense to obviously chop it down a lot, and then you could actually run it into the scene, the banquet scene. You could try. I put this in the chat. You could transpose the devils to before the banquet scene, and then kind of have them lurking in the background. And then you could the scene that kind of ends with Cesare saying, "Oh, I'm ill." It becomes his death, and then you've got Alexander, kind of crippled with poison himself, stood over the body of his dead son, and then the curtain pulls back and the devil appears, and it's like, shit, now it's my turn. And then that would just be great, because Caesar would have bought it. Alexander's having his little dance with the devil. All the other demons are already there on stage. It would be kind of, I think that would be far more satisfying, because you do want Caesar's death, definitely. It's like
the thing is, we can have Caesar's death. I mean, I like the idea that he's told, oh no, he's going to live, and then he's going to die later horribly, and then to see that, that's sort of how that I quite like that. I mean, all of the shape of it's really good. And it does seem to be someone who's watched Faustus and gone, there should have been a reckoning at the end of the play between him and Mephistopheles, which there isn't really. There's a bit of an exchange, but it's sort of left hanging. He's sort of left to his own devices and demons, depending which version. There's some people lingering, but you don't have this fight. You betrayed me, and fuck you. None of that stuff. Anyway, sorry, Aliki.
I just want to pick up on what Stephen was saying about the death speech. I think he's absolutely right that the writer is trying to do something there that's quite clever, and it's not just about giving actors free rein. It's also an attempt, I think, at psychological realism or at biological realism. And I think that's true to some extent of all of the dying speeches we've had in this play. I think they're enormously fun and really quite interesting, set apart from what the play as a whole is doing. In that they're showing different horrible deaths and different people realizing their deaths, and their inability to express what they're feeling increasingly as the feelings get worse and turn into, the pangs of death. I think it's really, really very creative, and I wish that I could have read more death scenes by this gentleman.
Yes. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, there are some quite effective bits where Alexander does just trail off or start stammering instead of being able to finish his sentences. But on the other hand, these speeches do have a kind of origin. I mean, I think in Tamburlaine, you get, I think particularly Zabina and her sort of brief mad scene before she dashes her brains out, is sort of shouting out a lot of incoherent stuff that it's more connected with the play, but it's prose, and it's, the whole thing suddenly goes into a different style. And I think there are other bits like it in Marlowe. And I think it's also rather like what Marston did in Antonio, I think it's Antonio and Mellida, where Piero, when he, it's villain talk. The villain just goes wild and starts gabbling. I think he's got this one weird speech, which might even be verse, but it's kind of a whole series of imperatives and then a whole series of verbs or of nouns. I don't know. Anyway, that I think that there is a kind of source for this.
Yes, it does feel like this Barnabe is riffing on actually quite a lot of relatively old theatre, actually, by this point. You know, a good 20, 30 years old in elements of this. And sometimes success. I mean, I like this final scene almost as in isolation. It's another one of those scenes going, yeah, I could do a lovely little podcast all on this, just as an isolated situation of someone awaiting their death, having, you know. And of course, the Merry Devil of Edmonton opens with a similar sort of game of this scene of demon turning up to collect. Though in that particular case, it was by a magician who went, would you like to sit in that chair while I do the thing? And sorry, it was a magical chair. You're bound there for all eternity. Would you like to give me some more time before the whole taking my soul thing? Oh, lovely. So we you know, clearly more than one author is riffing on this stuff, going, you know, what could we do with this? What can we take? Other thoughts before we go? I was going to say, it's final thoughts, isn't it? My word, doesn't time fly? Yes, we're well into extra time. Lois, any final thoughts for the play overall?
Well, overall, it did seem to me pretty incoherent. I mean, it is like a series of scenes that have been kind of cobbled together at the last minute. It rather fits the sort of description that I think the Duchess of Newcastle gave quite a long time after, where she said that people wrote scenes and then some hack came along and stitched them all together. And that's what she was doing. And what her husband always used to do was just write the scenes. And I think that's kind of like what's happening here. I mean, it's scenes written without much sense a lot of the time of what the link between them is supposed to be.
I mean, it sometimes it does. I mean, yesterday we had quite a good sense of a through line, and today, intermittently, we still have. I think it's the war is where the play really goes off the rails because it just doesn't connect. And I think with a certain amount of massaging, this text actually works really well. I think there's an awful lot of work to do with it. There's an awful lot of deciding how much to cut and where. But I do, after 3 days, have a sense of a through line for this, actually. I'm not sure I found a moral or anything, but I wasn't really looking for one. Lalitte, you were not here previously. How have you found this strange beast?
Yeah, I kind of kept on imagining it being played by the Python team, actually. You know, it just gets so that, you know, I couldn't decide whether some scenes were actually just extremely funny in a kind of macabre way. So I found it quite hard to take all of it very seriously, but then it suddenly would get quite serious, and I did find that, you know, the Pope suddenly trying to bargain and philosophize his way out, and finds all his arguments disappearing. That was actually quite intriguing, but yeah, I had no idea what to do with it. And I'm not sure seeing the whole play would make it any more coherent. It might actually make it even less coherent.
It's an interesting question about character arc as well, because Alexander does get all this philosophy at the end, and I'm not sure whether his character really supports that from the beginning. I don't recall him at the beginning. He did have a sort of philosophical opening when he sort of talks about his decision and where he is in the world, but I don't think it ever it really lived on this level, where this feels like a debate that's quite separate. Okay, Aliki, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly incoherent, but there's some really, really lovely stuff in there, and I think it's worth rescuing, whether we do it as a scene here and a scene there, or cut the devil out of, not literally the devil's one of the best bits, cut a lot out of it and try and do it like that. So I don't know, just a lot of fun to be had here.
Well, I think we can have the best of both worlds, because I quite like the idea of doing, you know, some random episodes of the podcast on the scenes that we like but don't necessarily aid the play, of which there are several scenes that in of themselves are quite good, but they ruin the flow. Sometimes you have to kill some of your best scenes to make the play work. But then, as I say, do an adaptation that gets the best out of the play overall. So I think we can have the best of both worlds, because I say this final scene, I really like the idea of doing a simple two-hander with it, remove some of the other material and just get down to a sort of Halloween special that just does this scene, which I like the idea of doing. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I must admit, what intrigues me is the bit in the heading of the printed edition, which is the author saying that he'd renewed, corrected, and augmented since the first performance. And it would be lovely to know what, in fact, the original performance at court had been. Whether the extraneous material is actually the battle scenes, or whether, as I suspect, it was actually the non-battle scenes that have been added, and that the original was really just an excuse for spectacle.
Well, there isn't enough play for it to just be the battle scenes. There's only 3 or 4 scenes in the whole thing. I mean, I could believe the demons weren't there in as much evidence from the off. That's possible. With a slightly different, they just get the cups wrong and then they all just die. That's another way of looking at it. But I don't see anything else which is short enough, apart from the war, that could be removed from the text. The only problem with removing the war as being the additions, as a straight set of additions, is it does have actually a reasonably tight 5-act structure, and that would totally bugger it up if we took the war out, because Act 2 is entirely war. So I don't see that that's necessarily what may have happened between earlier performances and this. It's just they might have got longer. There's an awful lot of very long speeches that pop up suddenly as well. So I wonder whether it's actually more piecemeal than that. That actually this final scene with the demon is, just had the oh I'm stuffed, am I? Here are your relatives dying. That's it, and all the extended thought is a later edition. That feels possible because it doesn't feel like it's written in the same tone, the tone tenor. So who knows? But it's a good question. Who's next? Sarah, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't find it incoherent, actually, at all. I find it problematic in that there are sort of 2 different plays wedged into one text. And personally, I'd cut all the Marshall stuff. And yes, by all means, especially the Katherine stuff, save it for a podcast. But in terms of staging it, I think if you cut out, bit of Act 1, all of Act 2, and then whichever act, I don't know if, or was that
End of
just
Act
one?
4.
End of Act 4. I mean, I think you could get it down to a fairly tight 3-act structure, and you could actually you could trim it down to the sort of length that kind of fits with a contemporary audience's expectations of how long they're going to be in the theatre. But with the judicious pruning, I think you've got a really coherent play here with a really strong narrative, great characters, tons of fun, and it's the sort of play, it's kind of joyous in that you could stage it very economically if you wanted to. We were talking the other day about how you could get the cast right down and you could stage it in poor theatre blacks on a bare stage with just a few key props or costumes or masks or whatever to bring it to life, and you could do that kind of production with it and it would be great. But you could also, if you had the budget, you could take this as over the top as you wanted and throw it all in and it would still be fantastic, and like any kind of production, it's got a flexibility to it. You could do any kind of production with it. It would also really work for audio. So I'm actually a massive fan of this play, and I'd be interested in doing it again, albeit in an edited form.
Yeah, it's inconsistent rather than incoherent. I don't think it is. It is deeply untidy, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a reasonable, plot line that is going on here. It's this family at war quality that's really quite nice. I don't know. Lois, want to pop back in again?
Well, the family at war thing is all right, but it just seems to me the coherent line through it is an extremely anti-Catholic one. I mean, I assume none of us are devout Catholics, but you really would be offending a lot of your audience, I think. I can't see any way really of going around the fact that almost everything that happens here is to show you that the Pope is horrible and that he's made a pact with the devil and that Catholics are awful. And the only thing I can think of is possibly contextualizing it, emphasizing that this is just after the gunpowder plot. I remember seeing a production of The Massacre at Paris at the Glasgow Citizens Theatre, in which they had Queen Elizabeth sitting at the back, supposedly watching it. We were supposed to be watching from backstage. And, the idea was that this whole thing was being presented for her benefit. And possibly something like that would make sense.
To a degree, I agree, and to a degree, I'm not so. In a sense that we've encountered ones that are much clearer in their oppositionary nature. In this sense, this is just an awful lot of horrible people being horrible, rather than I've not noticed any nice people who are being placed in opposition to them in that sense. No. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's definitely an anti-Catholic play, but I don't know if that's actually what people are automatically going to be worrying about in a way that, say a game at chess where you have the good people and the bad people, and the good people win over the bad people. In the sense here, we just have an awful lot of corruption that is in possession and doing things, and the fact that none of this is patently true does help. It's not like we're saying this is a documentary, though it is history, so it's true. He lied. I'm playing devil's advocate there, and there are a lot of demons in this room. Stephen, any final thoughts?
I kind of agree with everybody, really. I think it is doable. I mean, I would like to kind of edit it. So the only thing I have to add, really, is, my stupid clown obsession. This is a King's Men play, which I presume means Robert Armin. The kind of conventional wisdom about clowns is that there is a clown, and if there are sort of other comic characters, they are not the same kind of character by this point. And I find it really interesting that we've got effectively two takes on the same kind of character, because Frescobaldi and Baglioni have the same kind of verbal tics. The kind of clown things that Lois was referring to. One of them is presumably, the star guy, Robert Armin, who is there either held in reserve till near the end of the book, but they have a scene together. So he's either held in reserve at the end of the play, or he's kind of shuffled off halfway through. And I find that really, really interesting, just in the light of this kind of standard theatre history thing, which is, there is basically only one figure like that in the company, who is known as the clown, that we've got a kind of weird sort of Doppler thing going on here. And I think that's just really, really fascinating, that there's this really, really famous clown figure, and it's impossible to tell which is his part, because there are two parts which are virtually identical.
Sadly, we have run out of time. The demon's tapped on my shoulder and says that actually the time's up, and we have to move on, which is a shame, because despite any criticisms and propriety about much of this text, we've had rather a lot of fun. We quite like killing people horribly. Maybe we'll kill more people horribly soon, and you can watch for your entertainment. You can even join us. There's free sign-up sheets. You can join us anytime you like. Join us. We're not a cult. Okay, and on that note, all that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Take your repast upon these princely paps.